No.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar of the week. My name is Maya Fields. I'm an intern with Low Carbon City. Low Carbon City is an organization that is a citizen-led global movement that work to create collective solutions to fighting climate change and create sustainable cities. Today, we will be discussing environmental education in primary schools and secondary schools. And we'll be discussing, well, really, what is environmental education? What is the point? And is it possible to work on environmental education in Medellin, Colombia? So I am joined today by four very exciting speakers. I would like to welcome Kira Norton, joining us from the Antashka Green Schools program in Ireland. Welcome, Kira. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I would also like to welcome Jenny Cooper, joining us today from Seattle, Washington. Jenny works as the Director of Environmental Education and Sustainability with the Northwest School. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning.
And here with us as well is Alejandro Alvarez. Bienvenidos. He is a professor at EFIT University in Medellin, Colombia. Alejandro also works with a few educational projects in Medellin. So I'm very excited to have Alejandro here with us today to act as our Colombian spokesperson. Good morning, Alejandro.
Yes. Good morning.
Hi. So I thought we could begin by hearing a little bit more about the work you do. Kira, if you could start by telling us a little bit about what Green Schools is, what the Antashka does, and maybe what environmental education means to you guys.
Okay, so Antashka is the environmental, is the partner organisation for FEE that Breed works with, and they operate green schools in Ireland. It's known internationally as EcoSchools. What we do is we provide schools with work to work through different themes that we set them, and they're sequential themes, so one follows another. And to date, we've been in Ireland now for nearly 20 years, and we have about just over 90% of schools registered with us. About 70% of those, so just over 3,000 schools in Ireland, have been awarded the Green Flag Award, which kind of denotes their sustainability and their environmental management. And then from that, we may have more primary schools and secondary schools registered with us, but so kind of how we work it is we work them through themes. They go through litter and waste, energy, then water, then they look at sustainable travel, biodiversity, and then they look at global citizenship. So it's a structured framework that we give them, and schools then kind of interpret that how they wish, working within the guidelines that we give them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kira. That's really great to hear. Could you just touch a little bit upon what environmental education is for your organization? Maybe give us a brief definition.
So we're giving schools the skills to manage their kind of directly outside their school or within the school gates, but also, and by doing that, make an impact nationally and then internationally. So we're helping them to manage any environmental issues and become as sustainable as possible, while learning about what they're doing and how that impacts globally.
Very exciting. Thank you so much, Kira. And same to you, Jenny Norton or Jenny Cooper. Could you tell us a little bit about what does an environmental education and sustainability director do? And what is environmental education for you and for your school?
Yeah, sure. So I work at the Northwest School in Seattle, Washington. So our school is an independent school, so it's not a public school, and we're grades 6 through 12, so ages roughly 11 to 18. Our school was founded in 1980, and one of the sort of core values of the school from its founding was that education and environmental issues are intimately linked. So I'm going to answer your second question first, and then share a little bit of what I do. So for us at school, environmental education is inextricable from all education. One of our founders, Mark Terry, one of his sort of key philosophies was that all education is environmental education. So whether you're in a math classroom or an arts classroom or humanities, your lessons, even if you're not directly talking about environmental issues, the way that you structure your lessons, the way that you run your classroom, the way that you run even your meetings with teachers and administrators have implicit environmental lessons that you're teaching to whoever is in the room. So if it's, if you're sitting in a humanities class and the teacher hands out just paper to write on limitlessly, the message there is that paper is, abundant and we can use as much as we want. Or similarly, if you have, a hallway with only a garbage can and not compost and recycling, assuming your city has publicly available recycling and compost, if you don't have those, you're sending the message that, okay, you can just throw everything into a landfill receptacle. So environment is sort of core to our classes, core to our schedule. At the school, 3 times a week, the entire student body and faculty all divide up into about 90 teams and spend 20 minutes cleaning a particular area of the school. And this is meant to sort of ground our work in environment and sustainability in caring for your immediate surroundings first. So a little bit about what I do is first I help coordinate that program, which we call the Environment Program, where we all help clean the school. I also work with our operations and facilities team on sort of institutional environmental impact measurement and management. Work with teachers on curriculum development, weaving environment further into their curriculum and classrooms across grades, across disciplines. And then I do a lot with student leadership and facilitating the student group that works on environmental issues both inside of school and outside of school.
That's very exciting. Thank you so much, Jenny. So turning over to Alejandro Alvarez, I would love to hear a little bit about what projects you're working on at the moment and the work that you do at AFIT University.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and it is great to hear these experiences that you're sharing. I think it is very interesting. I work in a university, but I think that there is a very strong connection. There has to be a very strong connection between university and schools all the time. I mean, it is one of the most important responsibilities I think that the university has, is to give back to school and also get information from school to really know how to educate the human beings that we want for a sustainable future. So I work here in AFIT as a professor in the process engineering department, which is quite interesting because yes, I am in the faculty of engineering. What for some people will be like, why environmental education, why environmental culture in the faculty of engineering? But it happened so because let's say that process engineering started 20 years ago with a very strong focus on how to protect the environment. I think it is actually quite cool because we get to understand many of the relationships that we find between our society, our economic activities, our cultural activities, and the environment itself or nature itself. So I studied process engineering here. I did my master then in Germany. I studied sustainability sciences, and I came back here. So I work in the process engineering department and I teach industrial ecology, but on the other hand, I coordinate the area of environmental culture for the university. What we do there is that, well, mainly we have 2 courses that we offer to all students in the university. We have around 11,000 students, well, undergraduate students in the university, and we offer these 2 courses, sustainability or sustainable development and ecology. I teach one of them, but we have around 30, 39, 30 or 40 groups each semester. That means we have around 800 students from all different academic programs in the university in these two courses. This is, on the one hand, something, well, of course, very important because we get to show students a lot of things that they need to have within their knowledge, either if they are engineers or business administrators or biologists or I don't know, well, many of the programs, we have 20 undergraduate programs here, that all of them can choose one of these two lectures or both of them, and then have like this first like this first approach or this first image of what sustainable development and ecology are. Besides that, and I probably we can talk a little bit more about that later, but besides that, we coordinate a lot of activities that are very important. And there I want to say what Jenny said, and I think also Ciara was talking a little bit about it. I couldn't hear at the beginning very well, but the importance of having not only things in the classroom, but on the campus. Well, in our case, in the campus, that people really see that the messages that we are giving them within the classroom are coherent with that it's happening outside. Otherwise, there are always big contradictions, and we know that we have to face contradictions in our lives, and it will be so for the rest of our time. But the less contradictions in this field, probably the better, just that we can show them what's happening. So we have, and I'm gonna give just one example, we have here something that has been led by two professors of our team of environmental culture, and Rosana Rimendi and Laura Sierra, and they both teach ecology, and we have this, what we call eatable gardens, like jardines comestibles in Spanish. And what we do there is that we have like a place here where we can grow lettuce and a lot of plants, and we have students doing that, and they get to know the whole process, and they get to know things in the classroom that have to do exactly with what they are doing there. So this hands-on learning, this chance of really having something to do and to touch and to see and to feel is very important in environmental education, and the last thing I will say, in education for sustainable development, because I think we cannot talk about these things separately. As Jenny also said, we can just think that we can teach anything without considering that we have like this real and objective reality, or this objective reality of the nature that we have to take care about.
Thank you very much, Alvarez. That was really lovely to hear about. So you touched upon some of the methods that you guys are using at EFIT University, and I think that's a really important thing to bring into this conversation, is the question of how do you do it? I think that's what a lot of people are interested in knowing here, is how does it actually work? Who's in charge of it? What methods do you use? How are the kids involved? Maybe, Kira, can you touch a little bit upon how that works with Green Schools?
Yeah, so how we work it with Green Schools, and it feeds into how it's worked on an international basis as well with the EcoSchools program, is we have the 7-step framework, and that's kind of the framework for behavioural change, encouraging behaviour change. And it begins with setting up a committee within a school. So it's kind of a lot of how Green Schools and EcoSchools works, is that we're empowering students to kind of take charge of their own future and their own environment, and giving them the tools and the support that they might need to be the leaders in a school and to be kind of the change makers. So it starts with them setting up a committee and then kind of reviewing their environment in the framework of the theme that they're working on. So if they're looking initially at litter in their area and waste disposal, they'll kind of have a look around and see if there is an issue with litter, and they'll assess how much of their waste is going to landfill. If they're recycling, they can reduce both of those things, if they can compost. So that's kind of how we work it here, is that we begin by giving them the agency and the ownership over the program.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then as well, just for green schools, so once you've given them the ownership, is there any specific events or things that the kids are doing when you move up through those 7 steps? Maybe you can describe the 7 flags a little bit.
Yeah, so the 7 steps are the committee. Then they do what we call an environmental review. So as I mentioned, that's seeing what the situation is and what improvements can be made. Then they set about creating an action plan. So somewhere where they can measure what they're happening, they can set future targets, can quantify what they want to happen in terms of what the specific environmental issue is. They then move on and they have action plan. They inform and involve, so we ask them to get their community involved, and we ask them to make sure that it's not just the people directly involved in the program who know what's happening, but that there's communication with their fellow students, with people in their wider community, and that there's buy-in from staff, especially at like different school levels, that in a larger school there are people involved. Following on from that, they measure, so like they kind of monitor what's happening, they measure what's happening, and we asked them that they would hold an action day. They hold a day where, hi Reid.
Hi Kira, I'm so sorry, I just couldn't get it to work today.
They hold an action day where it's another way of involving their community. And also one of the 7 steps is curriculum links. So that feeds into what Jenny was saying earlier and Alejandro about making sure that environmental education and environmental management isn't just something that's separate to what's actually happening in school, but that it's part of their curriculum, it's part of their day-to-day, and it feeds into every level of education from humanities to sciences and so forth. And the themes that we have, in green schools, I'll just quickly run through them. Litter and waste, then they look at energy management, they look at water, they look at sustainable travel, they look at biodiversity, and they then move on and start refreshing those themes because it's a 2-year cycle. So that's that.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear about. Welcome, Reid. Connolly
Thank
is
you,
joining
and
us.
apologies.
Completely okay. Reid is joining us from Copenhagen in Denmark. She is working with the Foundation for Environmental Education. We were just discussing methods that we use. How do we do it? Environmental education. Maybe you can catch us up a little bit, Reid. What do you do with the Foundation for Environmental Education? And
very likely greetings from a cold, dark, dreary Denmark. I hope it's sunny down there where you guys are. Very likely Kira has told you what I would be telling you anyways, as Kira and her organization are the member organization that runs our program, the EcoSchools program, on the ground in the Republic of Ireland. So yeah, what was the question again? we call ourselves Foundation for Environmental Education, but basically, in the old days, environmental education was about nature and surroundings, but we definitely use education for sustainable development is included in our our take on environmental education. So it's all about socially responsible learning as well as litter and waste and stuff like that. It's very much related to developing the individual with a global conscience.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Reid. So the FEE and and the Green Schools program in Ireland, just in case that wasn't clear, they are kind of linked. They're cooperating in using the same step program, so 7 steps, and then working on themes that go in 2-year cycles. Jenny,
correct.
Yeah. So Jenny, you are working kind of more directly with the students in your school. So how did you guys develop your methods for teaching, and what are they? Can you maybe describe them a little bit to us?
Yeah, sure. So a couple notes that just to provide a little bit of extra context. So while environment and environmental education were and are core to the school's values since its founding, my role as a director of environmental education and sustainability has only existed since last year. So I'm new to the school, the role is new. And one of the things that I do is help to sort of connect all of these disparate programs and conversations and work around the school into one cohesive sort of environment and sustainability, I guess, thrust. And so we have a whole slew of programs and ways of teaching students environmental ed and weaving it into our existing curriculum. So a couple of them I'll just share. One is the environment program, which I mentioned earlier, where we all 3 times a week stop and clean the school and care for our surroundings for 20 minutes. So that's about 600 people all taking those 20 minutes simultaneously 3 times a week. We also have a very robust outdoors program, and that's available to all students in our school. They don't have to have any other experience in the outdoors, and there's trips every other weekend, hiking trips, kayaking, backpacking, snow igloo building, sort of runs the gamut. And that's all, it's our faculty who run that program. A lot of schools have like an outside company or organization that they work with on environment or on outdoors programs. We also have a handful of classes that weave environmental issues into the curriculum directly. So a couple that come to mind right now. One is our 11th grade chemistry class is doing a unit on green chemistry and looking at bioplastics and regular plastics, and students just made their own bioplastic and then buried it in our farm and garden, which we built last year that was all student designed. So they buried it alongside regular plastic, and they're gonna look and see over time how and if the bioplastic degrades any faster than regular plastic, and whether or not you'll even be able to see a difference over the course of a year. They're also doing work on chemicals in like personal care products. We have a ceramics class that just had an assignment where all the students for the past, I guess, trimester, so about 10 weeks, were making fruit and vegetables that were either on the Dirty Dozen list or the Clean 15 list from Environmental Working Group, and sort of processing sort of sustainable agriculture through the lens of ceramics. And then those are all going to be on permanent display in our dining hall. I'd say our dining hall and our campus in general, but specifically the dining program, is also a place where we do a lot of education that's outside of the classroom. So all of our entire community eats lunch together. That's also a core value to the school. And there's no garbage can or recycling in the dining hall. Everything is compostable. There's no single serving, like prepackaged anything. The director of the dining program also works with local farmers to try to source as much food as she can locally and organically, and then highlights sort of what we have that's local, what we have that's organic on the billboards outside where people wait to come get their lunch. So there's, I mean, I could go on. There's a lot of different programs sort of all working together. It doesn't necessarily make it simple or easy, but I think our approach to environmental ed is that it really should be woven into the daily fabric of your life, whether you're in the classroom or, as Alejandra said, the campus around you, sort of bolstering what you're learning in the classroom.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jenny. And Alejandra, hearing about these methods that are working in primary schools and secondary schools, do you think you could integrate some of those into working on a campus scale? And how are the programs that you guys are implementing being developed? Do you guys have more plans for the future, or the moment with EFU?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So talking about some of the methods there that you are hearing about from the people working with primary schools and secondary schools, you were talking about hands-on learning that you were using with EFU University. So how are you planning to develop your strategies at the moment?
Okay. Yeah, well, the first thing I have to say is that I told you before that we have this area that offers these 2 courses, and students can just take these courses or not. Okay, they are not mandatory for them, which you will say like, okay, that's a pity because everyone should be exposed to this kind of topics. On the other hand, we have, like, as I told you, around 800 students each semester in these 2 courses, and that means that there is a lot of exposure. But still, it is not what we aim to do. I mean, it is not what we should really be doing, because what we want to do and what we work on, before I talk about these specific methods, is that all curricula in the university takes a look at their specific topics. I mean, if I am studying, and I will say it again, if I am studying international business, then I have to know what does international business has to do with sustainable development and with environment or environmental aspects, of course, because it is a part of sustainable development. So maybe in that program, in that academic program, I will focus a little bit more on SDG and the Sustainable Development Goal 17, which is about cooperation and partnerships. But it doesn't mean that I can forget about SDG 13, which is climate change, or 15, which is life on the earth, or whatever, right? So one of the main things that we should do, and I think that the UNESCO has been also very clear on that. One of the most important things is to reorient the existing education programs. We cannot educate for the same things we have been educating for so long, right? So that's really easy, well, kind of easy to say, but really difficult to implement. And of course, in some places, in some countries in the world, they have done much more in that field than we have in Colombia. But we are working on that. So that's one very important aspect. On the other hand, I think that whatever we do in these courses, whatever we do to approach environmental education or education for sustainability, has to take into account that we are not talking only about a cognitive dimension. It is not only about giving information, but we are talking about socio-emotional dimensions, or these socio-emotional dimensions, as well as a behavioral component that Chiara was talking about before, I think. So one of the things we do, for example, is, or we try to do with our students, is each semester we do also like these kind of excursions. So we go to a completely different place. Here in Medellin, I don't know if you have heard about it, but our river is very polluted, it's very contaminated. There was that urban planning, there were a lot of things that happened, so that we have this river that has no oxygen in many of the parts crossing the city. So we go with our students to the place where the river starts. And for them, that's very shocking. Most of them haven't seen this river in a clean version of it. So that's something that you can prepare so that they see, that they experience themselves, and something that you can plan and questions that you can do, so that that experience also touches like the emotional dimension of the people that are going there, right? So that's one of the very successful things that we implement here in Low Carbon City. We have done a lot of things with Moravia, for example. I'm gonna try to share my screen for a moment, just to show you like a picture. Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
Okay, this is also something that we do with the students of sustainable development. So we go to Moravia, which is a neighborhood in Medellin that's very special place, because people there, leaders there, have transformed this space into something totally different. There are still a lot of challenges, of course, but the transformation is amazing, because it used to be the landfill of the city. And what you see here is that people started building the neighborhood or their houses on the garbage, literally, and then it expanded. And it is one of the most dense populated neighborhoods in Latin America. And what you see here is that students get the chance to know leaders from the community. In this case, we have their LT, which is a very strong woman that has done a lot of things. You will see in a minute. So they get to go there and they get to see what are the things that people are doing. I'm going through them a little fast to show you. For example, this is a fire that took place there in that neighborhood, and students get to see like how difficult it is that when we don't understand how our environment works, because we don't know the ecosystem services, the biodiversity, the kind of soil we have there, the kind of hills, the kind of everything. If we don't know that environment, we won't plan our city, our industry, our economy, our society. We cannot plan anything in the right way if we don't plan correctly, or if we don't understand and get to interact correctly with the environment. So these students get to go there and they get to see all of this, what I'm showing, but I'm not stopping there because I want to show what these people here in these pictures, what you see, this was the landfill before. And now people, I don't know if you get to see here, but there are still some people living there, but now they have this garden. And now they have this way of also working with plants and selling them, and with that money they get to finance also some other activities within the neighborhood. And for students to see that is very important, because they really see that on the one hand that they are very close to these things. We're working on a university in which many of these students don't live in such neighborhoods, so they get to see that we share that Medellin is not only the city they live in, the place they live in, but the city is much bigger with a lot of issues that also confront them, and they also should take responsibility on that, and they get to see how people can act. And that comes today to one of, in my opinion, one of the most difficult aspects is how do we get people to act and to behave differently, because we can talk a lot about these things, we can understand ecosystem services, we can talk about industrial ecology and whatever, but if we don't act differently, we're still buying the same things, riding or moving in the car every day. If we don't change behavior, it won't come to the change we need.
That's exactly the point we were trying to move on to. Actually, very good. Thank you, Alejandro. Is that do these programs have benefits, and do you see a change with your students because of these programs? Breed internationally, this program works. The FEE works with so many countries. So how do you see changes in behavior, and what kind of changes do you see, if any?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, we've definitely seen changes, but it's very difficult for us. At the moment, we've got 67 countries running the EcoSchools program, and either a huge, large scale like they do in Ireland and in Wales, or in America, or in a very much smaller scale in some other countries. We can see, and it has shown us that schools, it's of benefit to schools, it's of benefit to the community, and it's of benefit, of course, to the actual students. The results that we can see are, Kira can tell you about actual how much water you can save, how much electricity you can save, how much landfill and waste and so on you can save, and how beneficial that is. But what's more interesting for us, like Alejandra said, is that what's the behavior change, and we've also seen that it does. Our program does help economically, socially, and environmentally. It creates leaders. It empowers future decision makers. It widens to beyond the classroom to the community. It increases. We've been able to see from research that it increases students' levels of confidence and motivation. It increases their participation in environmental actions, and actions is where it is all about. The whole program is about acting hands-on, and it improves teamwork, and on a global level, because we work, schools work nationally, but they also work internationally together. So on a global level, it also increases ordinary everyday things like language acquisition, and it's also shown to increase and improve mental and physical well-being. That's from the student's point of view, and from the school's point of view, we are able to see that the students and teachers have more pride in their schools through using the program. And it extends all the way from kindergarten right up to university. So the same program works effectively all over the world because it's flexible, because the 7 steps are flexible.
Absolutely. And speaking of that flexibility, in Ireland, you've kind of customized the program to work for your schools a little bit. And it's been so hugely successful. What do you think has been what's your secret? Why does it work so well in Ireland, and what behavioural changes have you seen?
Well, I suppose it works well because what Bree touched on there is the flexibility. Like Ireland we have a lot of kind of dense urban areas like Dublin, Cork, Limerick. They're kind of the major cities, but we also have like a very rural population who are living in quite rural communities. We have some island schools who are living off the west coast. So how we've approached the program is that we've given schools that flexibility to approach the themes, to approach environmental management within their school as much as they can, as much as their resources allow, as much as their time allows. And the 7 steps works with that. So it acknowledges that not everyone is going to be able to put a garden on their roof. You know, some schools might not have any green space in their environment if they're in like the inner city, or some of them are just so rural that it's almost dangerous to be too far outside. We have a travel theme that looks at sustainable travel to and from school, and that's one of the themes where we've really had to kind of cater to all of the different things that might be facing a school in terms of if they have a pathway or a sidewalk outside their school, if they're serviced by any form of public transport, if the speed on the road is too dangerous for children to be walking because there's no path. So there's like a lot of different variables, and we try to understand that at the core of when we're working with schools, is that we understand that each school is very different.
Yeah. Speaking of that flexibility as well, I mean, you work with schools that are so junior infant schools. Children are so young. Are they even able to pick up any behavior, and what do you see with those schools? Is it even possible to teach environmental education at that age?
Yeah, I mean, we also have worked with preschools, so creches and Montessori age students, and we still are working with some preschools. So yeah, like it may not seem that they're getting maybe the higher, I suppose the notions behind why we're doing this, might not understand, why you need to conserve water, but it's easy to teach them to conserve water. And then we find that that pester power feeds in. So if you teach a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old that, if you leave the tap running when you're brushing your teeth every morning, which is like the most simple action, and it's what we always come back to when we're first beginning to teach children about water conservation. If they see their parent with the tap running, they're going to say it to them. So they do take it home, and they do really take these actions on board. And at that age, they're very open to ideas. They're open to changing their behavior, but they just don't know that that's what we're asking them to do. They just think that this is something that the older children in the school are doing, and it's something for them to emulate the behavior of the seniors in their school. So yeah, it's very possible to work with the younger students. Often they're a lot easier to work with.
Can I add, please?
Yes, please.
That I agree entirely with Kira, but one of the most successful countries that we have in the EcoSchools program is Russia, and they're way behind with sorting waste and so on and so forth, and they've again got schools way out the country in Siberia, many miles from another establishment or institution. And there's this great story of this 5-year-old. Of course, the teachers and the parents become more involved because you're a little bit limited what a 3-4-year-old can do. But there's this great story of a 5-year-old who watched her grandfather, not her parents, burn plastic in a bonfire instead of recycling, because there was actually no recycling facility. And she threw a tantrum and said, "You can't do that, you have to put it out," and you're stamping her foot. And grandfather's like, what, what's going on here? What are you talking about? And she said, "Don't you realize that the poisons that are the toxic elements that are being given off when you burn that plastic are killing us. And she got very excited. So he stamped her foot, and he had to put the fire out. So that is a really good story, a true story. And the best part of it is that then that community got together and actually did start recycling and insisted that it could be done, and that plastic shouldn't be burned, and so on and so forth. So absolutely, kids they get it. The younger you start, the better. But you do need some passionate teachers and parents that are going to lead the way a bit. But there are ways of teaching very small kids, yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's such a wonderful example. And speaking of those passionate teachers, Jenny, you have been with the school for a year now. So what do you see in your students? So about a year now into the program. How do they respond to these issues when you talk to them about them?
I mean, I think so. A handful of thoughts are coming to mind. One, I think everyone has touched on this, but how we establish the norm and how do students perceive their normal surroundings at school, whether it's that, there's compost, recycling, and waste receptacles, or that there's no packaging in the dining hall, or that we have, in every classroom a bin of recycled paper that's been printed on one side, but you can use the other side for scratch paper. I think that sort of norming process is really important, and establishing sort of what people's default behaviors are, because by and large, the easiest thing you can ever do is just do the default that you've always done. So if you start forming what you've always done very early, around environmental issues and engagement, I think that can have a great impact. So I've only been at the school for a year. I think one of the things that I've noticed a lot around environmental issues and other issues more generally is the impact that student leadership can have. Last year was the first year that our schedule allowed us to have really robust student groups or clubs. Previously, we had student groups, but they only got to meet for an hour every 5 or 6 weeks. Now they meet for 35 minutes once or twice every week.
Wow, super.
So in the past year, so when I first started, environmental student group, that went from 5 students to 30 students this year. Last year was about 25. And watching how students develop as leaders, whether they're seniors or 12th graders and at the top of the school, or 6th graders or 8th graders or anywhere in between. One of the things that I think environmental issues provides is the opportunity for hands-on engagement and engagement across disciplines. So we have last year, one of the big projects of the student environmental group was to design and build a campus farm and garden that we took half of our outdoor basketball court and transformed it into a farm and garden. So our school is situated in the heart of Seattle. It's very urban and in the most densely populated neighborhood in the city. So we don't have the luxury of land and space, and we can have our 1 acre student farm. No, we have 1,500 square feet. But the leadership piece is huge. Students have taken on, so they took on that project. There are students who wanted to do a dining hall waste audit this year. So for an entire week, they measured the entire school's lunch waste, and they separated it out by grade and had a bit of a competition to see which grade would waste the least. And that got conversation going a lot. In the environment program, I send out weekly discussion prompts so that if teams have already completed their cleaning work in their 20-minute period, then they can have a discussion about I'd sort of go by themes. So like wastewater in Seattle, where does the water go when it rains? It rains a lot here. You know, climate change, soil, compost, where does our garbage go when we throw it in the compost recycling or garbage? So the conversation is sort of constant, I would say. And we definitely have students who over the years who graduate from here, go to university and say, why doesn't my university or dorm have a composting system or recycling? I'm so used to it. Like, where do I throw all this garbage? I don't want to put it in the garbage can. And we've had students who will start recycling programs at their universities or in their dorms after they've graduated. I think one of the challenges, though, in terms of thinking about results and sort of what is the impact that we're having, is that my view is, as a school, the greatest environmental impact we have is the students that we graduate. But once they've graduated, it's difficult to figure out how they're engaging in the world, how they're staying engaged in the work, when so much of our personal environmental impact happens on a daily basis, just with our, you know, habits and how we go about our lives. You know, it's very difficult to assess how are our students doing afterwards. So I'd love to hear at some point if anyone has suggestions about how to sort of better track the results of, you know, quite abstract goals, I guess. I would love to hear thoughts on that.
Yeah, if anybody wants to take that up. I know, I mean, at the FEE also, EcoSchools runs all the way up to campus level. So Breed, you probably see that program kind of continue onwards.
Yes, I mean, that's one of our best stories, that the between 2003 and 2009, pupils in Ireland, Portugal, Iceland and Russia who'd been through the EcoSchools program started third level and said, you know, where's the Eco Committee, and approached the administration. And luckily they were visionary enough to say, okay, let's start this thing. And, you know, now it's extremely successful. It exists in 15 countries. Slovakia just started today. But if we were going to go back to, I've lost my train of thought again, what you were talking about, I've gone blank.
Results after.
Oh yes, yes. That's very, Jenny, like you say, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to keep track. We're going to start working on it. We're going to try and get out there. We started a Facebook page where we said, if anybody knows of anybody who's been through the system, can you please contact us? I don't think we've got so many yet. Oh, what was I going to say? It was something about, I'm sorry.
Don't worry, that's fine. It's the afternoon in Denmark right now.
Yes. I was talking to Australia this morning, very early, but that's no excuse. Results.
Yeah, I suppose behavioral outcome.
Behavior. Yeah, sorry, it's come to me. Okay, so the problem is always resources and how to measure impact. So we're giving from a sponsor. We're allowed to use a lot of the money over a 3-year period to do research on impact. And what we discovered is that, and Kira knows even more about this actually, is that young people, with regard to the theme of litter and waste, so young people are really good, and older people can be really good. But from the ages of around 13 to 16, even though you've been really good and the default is don't drop the litter, as you say, Jenny, that something goes wrong in those years. So teenage years between 13 and 16 especially, they just drop out. Things get bad. And what we still don't know is whether they come back in again. We think they do, but it's really, really difficult to measure and to keep a long-lasting result of it. But we're working on it. So, you know, might have some better results to show next year and the year after. We're continuing with that project research.
That's very exciting. Yes.
I will add something shortly to that, because I do think that for measuring impact, there is on the first hand, there is a big lack of resources. but there is also a big lack of knowledge. And I mean, because you don't only want to measure how much people just started wasting less water, or I don't know, consuming less, or consuming just more responsibly, but it is also very important in education to measure if you get to reach this learning objective that you need to have in your curriculum. Like, you have a specific learning objective, and for the cognitive dimension, again, can be kind of easy, but for the other dimensions, it can be very difficult. I mean, there is almost no literature about measuring how the learning objective in the socio-emotional dimension or the behavioral dimension can be measured. So that's also something very important that will have to be like a matter of research and further development, because I think there is still a lot to do there.
Absolutely. And kind of bringing that to the grand scale of things, what do you think is the biggest challenges that all of you are seeing right now with environmental education? What's hard, and what works, and where do you hope to go, I suppose?
I think, if I can jump in, I think on the macro level, one of the most difficult things I see, not necessarily in my school, but just sort of in the field as a whole, is that we're at a place where environmental education is thought of as something very separate than the rest of education. And, you know, with the exception of, you know, in a few different types of communities, in terms of like folks who are really into environmental education generally think it should be a part of all education. But this perception that like learning about the environment is something that we're meant to do in a specific space and time or a specific class, and that other classes don't have to address that. Finding ways to make the case that it is actually, those are environment and every other discipline are intrinsically linked, and that it is the responsibility of all teachers and all schools to be engaged in this work, not just a small subset of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And what about for the EcoSchools program? I mean, what are your challenges at the moment? What are you seeing?
Is that for Kira or for me?
For you, Breed.
Okay.
I'll move on to Ireland in a second.
So I agree entirely with what Jenny says. It has to be a whole institution approach, and the EcoSchools program works like that, where, you know, it's student led. The Eco Committee are doing a lot of the hard work, but there's a ripple effect, so it comes out to the whole school, and then out also to parents and to the rest of the community. Unfortunately, my answer to that question is resources, resources, resources. We know that teachers are, you know, underpaid, overworked. So are an awful lot of the people in the NGOs that lead these type of programs. I felt that, you know, that's such a dull and boring answer, because, you know, that's obvious. But so I even asked my colleagues, and they all kind of went, yeah, we just need better resources, more resources. So there were no help, unfortunately. Whole institution approach, get everybody on board. Like Jenny says, education for sustainable development, environmental education, it can't just be one silly silo all on its own. It has to be spread through all of the other subjects and themes. Everybody has to buy into it. Yeah.
Speaking of that whole community support in the Ireland, you've had a lot of cooperation from government institutions. Could you touch a little bit on that? Because I think that's quite interesting, how really Dublin's come together.
Yeah, we're quite lucky in that regard. The programme has received support from a few of our government departments who, I suppose, have recognised the work that we're doing with schools and how that links to their own objectives. So kind of the programme itself has funding from the Department of Communication, Climate Action and Environment, which is the kind of Department of the Environment. And we also have funding from the Department of Transport, Tourism and Sport, who fund our travel program through the National Transport Authority. So they are using us to get the message to schools about sustainable travel and encouraging children to walk and cycle to school and use sustainable methods. We also have funding through the marine kind of section of a planning department who are using, have funded us to deliver a marine environment and a marine litter program through Green Schools. So there's probably a few others that I'm leaving out, but they're, we also, the Department of Foreign Affairs through their Irish Aid program, through their development aid, also have given us funding in the past, and we have an application for funding with them right now. The same with the a department that looks after nature and biodiversity, and they also give us funding through a program, the National Parks and Wildlife Service. So these it's a way for those departments to get to schools within the established program that we have. And it allows us then to fund staff in certain aspects so that staff can visit with schools, to fund resources for teachers, and to deliver things like our handbooks and our written materials that we can give to schools. So it's been great. We've been very lucky.
That's wonderful. And for you now, being so successful, just very quickly, what are the challenges that you're experiencing and where do you want to go?
So we don't have every school in Ireland with incredible environmental management, so that's our end goal. Working within, I suppose, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals framework, and helping schools to understand those and to work towards those. But we also, I suppose, it's difficult at the moment because, like Breed mentioned, teachers are under a lot of pressure. There's a lack of resources for teachers. We also have a situation where we're competing against a lot of programs, extracurricular programs within schools. It kind of feels like any kind of issue within society, they deliver a schools program to work on that. And, that's time that we're competing with. So that's where we are, like, our curriculum links and trying to get environmental education into every aspect of a school's day-to-day is important. And then also just, I think there's a lot of negativity surrounding the environment, a lot of negative messages. It can be difficult to kind of turn that on its head and make the work seem like you can actually make a change. You have images of starving polar bears that are very moving and very difficult to see, but it can seem kind of outside the reach of a school to do something about that. So that's something that's something that we're challenged with.
Absolutely. That's, of course, resources are difficult, but it sounds like it's really incredible how you're managing in Ireland. So just before we wrap up, if everyone could just give a 30-second pitch on where do you start? How do you start an EcoSchool? Just for everyone here in Colombia, that's just such a new topic and people are just learning. So what do you do? How do you start? Maybe we'll start with Breed.
How do you start an EcoSchool?
Yeah, how do you start?
Well, you see, in order to start, you can go onto our website and download all the information and the material about the 7 steps and so on and so forth. But the best way to do it would be to find an NGO in Colombia which is willing to run the good news, the program. And the good news is that our CEO had discussions with 3 different NGOs in Colombia last week, or on Monday, in fact, this week. Yeah. So hopefully they are going to somebody in, I don't know which one of them they're going to sign up, but so the 5 FEE programs will have a chance to be run out. We're working at the moment with the Ministry of Tourism there because they're working with the Blue Flag program, and so they've suggested these other NGOs, and NGOs are going to they will sign up. But so you really have to, in order to do it properly, you have to have an NGO on board to begin with, and then we help with handbooks and with webinars and all sorts of things, and start with the 7 steps.
Wonderful.
Structured, collect, gather, do action, positive actions, celebrate.
Wonderful. And Jenny, what would your advice be to a teacher in Colombia who's interested in starting this program?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It depends. I would say it depends on the context of the school, both internally and externally. But one of the things that's been really important for our work at the Northwest School is that we have a sustainability committee that started out being just comprised of faculty who care deeply about environmental issues. You know, I'd imagine it started with 1 or 2, and now it's up to about 20 in a faculty of 120. So it's a big portion of our faculty, and just having that community of people that you know that you have a regular meeting with, you can share ideas and see what springs from there. But I think one of the biggest challenges that I've heard from teachers at other schools is just feeling like, oh, as an individual, I know I want to do something. I want to do something with my class, but I don't know how to make that school-wide. And finding the people in your community who are passionate about this. Also, it's really useful to have parents who are excited about this work, who can often be that connection to an NGO or a company or a foundation, or they might have professional experience that they're willing to share. So I think the first step is finding your partners and your allies, and also finding some students who are really jazzed about the work.
That's so exciting.
Also helps.
Thank you. So very quickly from Alejandro, what do you think? Can this work in Colombia?
Yeah, absolutely, and it has to work. I think this is something that has to happen, and I want to thank all of you, the 4 of you, because it's been very interesting to see this. I think that talking about challenges, I will just do like the close-up from my side, but I do think that what we are doing is very important, and what you guys are doing in the EcoSchools and Jenny there and Tiara, that's all very cool. But we need to know that those things there, those things here, they really need to scale up. I think that we cannot be afraid, and for the people that also sees this webinar, they need to know that these really cool things are happening, but right now they are probably not enough. I mean, we really need to get to more spaces, and we really need to scale up all these strategies. And for that, I'm saying this because that's something that I find very interesting. And I am engineer. I started engineering at the beginning, and now I will do my PhD about public policy and governance. And I'm doing this because I really think that we need this bottom-up, this grassroots efforts everywhere, that we also need to engage people and to engage a lot in order to bring these things also like top-down. I mean, we really need to become very active and get these people that make the decisions to decide something that's for a better future, not for the same thing that we have been doing. That, of course, is also very difficult, but I think that's a very big challenge. We have to do something about it, and we need to get more people to do something about it.
Yeah.
I just want to echo really quickly what Alejandro said about policy. And so I used to, before working at a school, I worked in international and city level climate change policy. And one of the challenges that I've been trying to take on is to figure out how do I provide experiential learning opportunities in environmental policy for our students. So how do you translate what you're learning about how to go about your daily life in terms of environmental issues to scale that up to the policy level and be really thinking systemically about how do we bring these issues to decision makers and have a top-down and bottom-up approaches simultaneously.
Absolutely.
And I would like to say that there's hope in that the SDGs are a really good tool. And if we can link, we can, because education for sustainable development, as we already said, touches so many things, social, economic, so on and so forth. So if we can get NGOs in countries that are working with education for a sustainable development to connect with the governments that have signed that they've got to introduce the NGOs, then that's a really good link. And then that's a little bit more of that bottom down, top up stuff. So I'm very hopeful about the SDGs.
I think this has been a really exciting discussion, and I hope that that our listeners have been inspired by all the work you do. I'm really inspired, and I think it's wonderful to see. So thank you, everybody, for participating. I won't keep you any longer.
Thank you
Have a
very much for
wonderful
hosting.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.